So I wanted to talk a little bit about file organization before diving into the Lightroom software. It's really important to organize your files in some way where they're easy to find and the structure makes sense. Now, I've been working digitally since, well, about 20 years ago, let's say. And I've learned over time a fairly good structure that works for me. So this is my main hard drive. I should say that I have a backup drive. It's always good to have some sort of a backup of your images if you're going to be a professional, or if you just want to make sure you have your family photos safe. Back in the day, you didn't really have to worry about prints getting ruined because you always had the negatives, or you'd store the negatives somewhere safe, humidity controlled, not in the basement, that sort. But now it's more of worries about corruption, or a house fire, or just really what I'm talking about is a hard drive crashing. So I always have two hard drives, one that is where I store my photos that is not on my computer, and because you don't want to fill up your computer if you can. Good practice would be to store files off the computer, because if you fill up your hard drive, your computer slows down. At least its ability to edit files significantly slows down. So anyway, I'm going to assume though that most of you will have your files on your actual computer. If you have another drive that you can back them up to, it's just smart. But let's talk about how to organize them when they're on your computer. I'm working on Mac, so this is what my file system looks like. I've got my main hard drive on the left here. These are my subfolders. And I take all my images that I import into the software, and I just copy them in one location on my hard drive. Once I've edited files, they go into this artwork folder, and there's a bunch of different projects in there. But let's talk about my file structure for the files that come straight out of my camera. You'll see that I have this structure where, I guess ever since 2011, I should say, this says iFi, and that's just the memory card I had at the time was Wi-Fi enabled, and so it would transfer the files automatically into my hard drive. You just had to walk in the house after photographing, it would transfer over. So that's why this weird name's there. I would call them just, my photos if I were you. And then I structure them by year, month, date, and then there's a describer to them. So that is kind of the best way of organizing. And I'm going to just scroll down to the bottom file here. And you'll see inside there, I've just copied in the file straight from camera. And I'm essentially showing you this one because I didn't think about it when I did it. It's actually a good idea to rename your files when you import them into your computer. And there's ways to do that in Lightroom that we'll get to. But if you don't do that, that's okay. As long as they have unique file names that you can do a search on your computer and easily find it. And usually the camera goes, a couple thousand before the file name, or I guess 10,000 before the file name might repeat. How many different numbers are there? There's A3A, and then there's a 4-digit number, so 10,000. And that's a lot of photos. So in a matter of this class, you don't need to worry about that happening. So that's just my simple structure of setting up things. You don't ever want to move any photos after you have imported them into the software. And I guess I should say a little bit about the software. The software is a database program, and it does non-destructive editing. So when I go and I import it into the Lightroom software and I edit it, it doesn't need to be saved. It's just automatically saved in the database. Basically, it's like the file that's here is the master, okay? And what you see in the software is a preview of the changes that you would apply to it. But when you go to grab a file to upload to turn it in, you always want to make sure that you export it out of Lightroom and give it a new unique file name. And I would structure this probably in a different location. So if I were you, what I would do is maybe make a folder for your, in your hard drive, you got your photos, and then you could make a folder either in this structure or somewhere else here that is like your exported files. So that's kind of what I was talking about, is my artwork file here. There's images that I've edited in Lightroom. They go in here, and that's where I will do any like fine tuning manipulation in Photoshop or just sizing things right to be printed. But that's kind of like the place that I would put things if I were you, for maybe have a subfolder for project 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, there's 10 projects in the class, and just put the files that you plan to turn in that subfolder. The same will go for when we make contact sheets, which are the proof sheets, I guess I should say, where there's just little thumbnails. You might want to make a separate folder on your hard drive for those, and that way you can organize them all in one place. So they're easy to find, easy to put up into the computer or into the online to submit for grades. But just make sure you're not going into this original files folder and grabbing the actual file out of here, because that's going to be whatever it looked like straight from the camera. If you've done any, you know, brightness adjustments, color adjustments, or cropping, or, you know, editing, I call it manipulation, but Lightroom doesn't have a lot of manipulation capabilities. You won't see what you've applied to it if you go back to this original camera files folder. Okay.